So now I don't necessarily need to take the juice. And some would argue that that is an accurate position to take. Now we have a clip here on good old CNN where they've kind of confronted Slouchy with this idea. And let's listen to his response, shall we? Again, I'm not making any judgments here. I think you guys know my position on a lot of this stuff, but let's just, be objective and listen to the so called science or expert, as it were.
There was a study that came out of Israel about natural immunity, and basically the headline was that natural immunity provides a lot of protection, even better than the vaccines alone. What are people to make of that? So as we talk about vaccine mandates, I get calls all the time. People say, I've already had COVID, I'm protected, and now the study says maybe even more protected than the vaccine alone. Should they also get the vaccine? How do you make the case to them?
You know, that's a really good point, Sanjay. I don't have a really firm answer for you on that.
That's a really good question. I don't have a firm answer for you on that. Experts, right? Experts. Taking your life into their hands, suggesting that, yes, you go get this juice. Even some of you that might have, had this thing. Yeah, go out there. Get it. They're pushing it on us all. And they don't even have answers for these very, I'd say, honest questions. I don't really have an answer for you. Has he ever had a real answer for anything outside of some lie or contradiction? Kremlin slouchy over here. I mean, this is just goodness gracious. All right. So we bring the receipts. We show you guys how a lot of this stuff doesn't make any sense. A lot of it just seems like total psyop. Now let's go back to, I believe this is a clip from 2009. Now this is just going to give you a little evidence for the more of the financial argument of this all, showing you the again tying this into the argument we were making in the last show about the surface level understanding of conflict of interest for the for the coincidence theorists out there that don't believe any of this is conspiratorial. At least we can get them to understand the argument of conflict of interest, the financial argument. We could make that argument that, look, okay, you might not believe in all these strings that are being pulled, but you have to see that all of this, whether it be surface level or not, at some level, are completely driven uh, by financial gain. Okay, so this is just a little taste, just a little taste.
To the system where the companies have a degree of confidence that things are not going to roller coaster on them is to just get more and more people vaccinated each year. If you look at the history of vaccinations for influenza over the last several years, with the increased and the expansion of the recommendations from the CDC, we've gone from 20, 30, 40, 50 million up to now over 100 million. You know, as a public health person, I would think that the goal that I would see to really stabilize the system and therefore make it less of a crisis issue when you get to have a pandemic flu, which we know will again occur as was predicted, even though they're rare events, they do occur, is to get as many people vaccinated as possible. And what we foresee in the future is that influenza vaccine will be something that is essentially a routine vaccination for everyone. And if we then transition that into the universal vaccine, then you may only have to do that every couple of years and get people protected not only from seasonal flu, but from pandemic flu. In my mind, that's the end game. And that's good for the companies, too, because they're going to know and predict that every year the vast majority of the American population is going to get vaccinated, not having to guess will they or will they not this year.
Man, do you hear this guy? Do you hear how he's talking about massive populations of people, potential customers? Can you believe it? We just need to inoculate everybody. So we have guaranteed income. What did he say? Influenza, a universal influenza. This was exactly what I was talking about. I wasn't aware of this at the time. But this is what I was talking about, this idea of a universal inoculation under the guise of curbing an illness like influenza, under that guise. But really, what it truly is a way to biologically control an entire population of people, the earth at this point, but also create a never-ending, ceaseless stream of income for those in power. Inhumane, says B1MW. Absolutely. Inhumane. Listen to this guy. We're just running back just a little bit. Listen to this gremlin over here, man.
Pandemic flu, which we know will again occur, as was crisis issue when you get to have a pandemic flu, which we know will again occur, as was predicted, even though they're rare events, they do occur, is to get as many people vaccinated as possible. And what we foresee in the future is that influenza vaccine will be something that is essentially a routine vaccination for everyone. And if we then transition that into the universal vaccine, then you may only have to do that every couple of years and get the vaccine will be something that is essentially a routine vaccination for everyone. And if we then transition that into the universal vaccine, then you may only have to do that every couple of years and get people protected not only from seasonal flu, but from pandemic flu. In my mind, that's the end game. And that's good for the companies, too, because they're going to know and predict that every year the vast majority of the American population is going to get vaccinated, not having to guess, will they or will they not this
2009. Think about it. I don't have to say much. Just show you guys. Really don't have to say much. Where are we now? Oh. This is life from now on. Israel's CV czar warns people to prepare for a fourth injection of the juice. Yeah, man. It is all coming to pass, guys. What did he say? That's the end game as I see it. He said end game. He used that word. He used that term. End game. End game. Game. We're all being played. All of us. Now, let's go to, the illustrious central bank Madame Christine Lagarde. I got to give you guys a warning here for some of this stuff. I'm sure you might get a little sick to the stomach watching these individuals, listening to them speak. But I got to show you these things, man. So let's see what the global oligarchic financial powers have to say about this. Let me tell you something. If the establishment is supporting the movement you're in, you're not the resistance, okay? You should be very concerned when the moneyed 0.01% are telling you what to do, are pushing you towards some type of medical experience. You should be very wary of that. I shouldn't have to tell people this, But we're in a position now where everyone just believes and trusts everything they hear. And look at what those in power, right? The big oppressive state, right? The big historically racist and oppressive state. Look at what they have to say. Do you trust them?
In addition to supporting the recovery, we have to anticipate. And by that, I mean we have to vaccinate. Because if we don't vaccinate around the world, as we should, it will come back to haunt us and it will come back to hurt us.
Look at that for a second. For a second, let's just consider how hurt have we honestly been since March 2020? Let's be realistic here, guys. I mean, for some people, unless they had their television on or they're surfing through social media every day, they didn't even know anything was going on. Especially when we consider the fudged and, cooked statistics and numbers and figures, especially when we consider the so-called numbers of death. When we consider all of these things, when we look at full communities, full nations that have hardly been touched by this thing, as if it kind of floats around and it's choosy. We got some kind of choosy disease that just likes certain type of people or is, partial to certain regions of the planet. Have we really experienced the level of danger that these people are alluding to? It's the level of gaslighting is it's insurmountable. I've never, ever, ever come across such nonsense. But again, it's the scaring you. It's like, oh, you know what? We have to just give everybody the juice. Otherwise, we're going to get hit with another pandemic. I'm still waiting. I shouldn't say that actually, because what did Gates say? Well, they'll take the next one more seriously. We do have to consider the fact that they may very well release a legitimate bug, right? But that's for another show. Let's listen to the demons speak.
So vaccination around the world is the best way to anticipate what could come back in the form of new variants, in the form of additional contagion. And to do that, the world needs to be a little bit more generous. And in being generous, it will be self-serving its own interest. So as you know well, I am baffled by the fact that the entire global community cannot put together $50 billion in order to address vaccination in those countries of the world where only 2% of the population is vaccinated. By that, I mean the low-income countries. We have spent in fiscal support $6,000 billion. $6,000 billion. What is needed is 1% of that.
Yet we got people like Musk trying to go to Mars, right? And all of these other projects that are just being funneled with money. And how does any of this make sense? Is anyone thinking about these things? I mean, how does any of this stuff make sense? Oh, we need to be more, what does she say? We need to be more generous. We're the ones that need to be more generous. Us common folk, us plebs, we need to be more generous. And what did she say after that? It will be self-serving. And then she says, self-serving its own interest. It's funny how they flip it and they make their interests yours, and how they convince us that their goals are our goals. Interesting, isn't it? Clever. Very, very clever. I must say.